Hey there, amazing people. So glad you're here. If you're digging what you hear, please hit that subscribe button, give us a follow, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Your support means the world. Now, speaking of things that'll truly make you think, have you ever heard of a last will and testament that was more than just a list of assets? Something that was a puzzle, a mystery, a cry for justice from beyond the grave. Well, buckle up because today I'm going to tell you a story about a will that wasn't just unusual, it was a ticking time bomb of truth, a silent testament to a betrayal that almost tore a family apart. This wasn't just about money, it was about exposing a lie, honoring a memory, and fighting for a legacy that had been stolen. Get ready for a journey filled with raw emotion, shocking revelations, and a powerful message about facing the past to reclaim the future. Part 1: The Unsettling Terms of the Will. The lawyer's precise, almost clinical words hung heavy in the air, a stark, bizarre counterpoint to the raw, visceral grief that still choked us. A task, a riddle. The very notions felt alien, profoundly out of place in the solemn atmosphere of a will reading, especially one for our grandma. It felt less like a solemn last will and more like a cruel, elaborate game, a twisted postscript to grandma's life, echoing with a faint, unsettling dissonance that grated against our mourning hearts. Internally, a cold knot, tighter than any grief, formed in my stomach, coiling with a slow, creeping dread with each unexpected, perplexing phrase Mr. Peterson uttered. Was this grandma's idea of a final, eccentric joke, a peculiar test of our affection or ingenuity? Or was there something else entirely, something hidden, something profoundly sinister lurking beneath the surface of this bizarre request? My mind, still swimming in the hazy, melancholic current of sorrow, struggled desperately to reconcile the cherished image of our practical, loving grandma, a woman of straightforward kindness and unwavering common sense, with this theatrical, utterly perplexing demand. A tremor of something beyond mere grief, a nascent anxiety, a chilling apprehension, a creeping dread began to prickle insidiously at the edges of my consciousness. A faint, disquieting whisper of much deeper, darker secrets yet to be unearthed. The familiar patterns of our family life, comforting in their predictability, felt suddenly, irrevocably warped. Max, ever the pragmatist, a man whose strength lay in his logic and his ability to anchor us, was the first to visibly break the stunned silence. His voice was tight, laced with barely suppressed frustration that bordered on a quiet, simmering anger, a rare fissure in his usually impenetrable composure. "Mr. Peterson," he began, his tone a strained whisper of his usual calm, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrest of his chair. With all due respect, Grandma wasn't one for puzzles. She certainly wasn't one for games, especially not for her final wishes. What in the world is this, really? Is this even legally binding? Is there some trick? His eyes, usually so steady and unwavering, the very picture of control, flickered with a raw confusion, a rare crack in his stoic facade that betrayed his strong, inherent need for order and logic. The absurdity of it gnawed at his core, demanding an explanation that wasn't forthcoming. Lily, her delicate features still a tear-streaked mask of sorrow, looked utterly bewildered, clutching a crumpled tissue in her small hand as if it were the only thing grounding her to reality, keeping her from floating away on a sea of grief. "But a game?" she mumbled, her voice a fragile whisper, her innocent heart unable to grasp such complexity or potential malice in the face of such profound, innocent loss. "It doesn't make any sense. Grandma would never put us through something like this. She loved us too much. She wouldn't want us to suffer more." Inside, I felt a deepening chill, a profound, unsettling intuition that something far more insidious, far more sinister, was at play than just a quirky will. It was like Grandma, even in death, was desperately trying to tell us something, urging us to listen to a story she couldn't tell herself. A silent plea from beyond the grave, reaching out to us from the veil of eternity. This inheritance wasn't merely about what she'd left us. It was about a painful, hidden truth she desperately needed us to uncover, a truth that felt strangely vital to her peace and, disturbingly, to our own futures. The air in that room, usually so full of Grandma's warmth and the scent of her rose potpourri, was suddenly frigid, pregnant with unspoken secrets. Each tick of the grandfather clock amplifying the growing sense of dread and suspicion. Part 2, the first clue, Grandma's hidden diary. The first clue, scrawled hastily on a yellowed index card, was chillingly cryptic. The highest silence holds the oldest secrets. Seek where the past rests forgotten. It pointed us unequivocally towards Grandma's attic, a place we hadn't visited since childhood, a vast, dusty repository of forgotten laughter, whispered dreams, and accumulated decades. As we slowly ascended the creaky, narrow stairs, each step seemed to echo the passage of time, heavy with memories, both sweet and now strangely unsettling. A powerful wave of nostalgia, thick with the scent of old wood and mothballs, washed over me, immediately followed by a sharp, cold prickle of unease. What kind of secret would Grandma keep hidden here, in a place so full of our childhood innocence? What could be so old, so silent, yet so important now, that she would tie her final wishes, her very legacy, to it? The air itself seemed to hum with unspoken truths, urging us forward. The air up there was thick, musty, redolent with the scent of forgotten paper and decaying fabrics. We sifted through trunk after trunk, each one a miniature time capsule. Faded photographs of beaming ancestors, meticulously folded quilts from generations past, boxes brimming with handwritten letters tied with decaying ribbons, trinkets from countless vacations. It was a tangible connection to Grandma's long, vibrant life, now tinged with a haunting sense of purpose. Max's keen eyes, ever watchful, were the first to spot it. A small, intricately carved wooden box, tucked away and almost entirely concealed beneath a heavy, moth-eaten tapestry in a dimly lit corner. His fingers brushed against it, a momentary hesitation before pulling it out, dust puffing around it like a cloud of forgotten time. Found something, he grunted, his voice low, a note of grim satisfaction mingling with apprehension. My fingers tingled with a bizarre mix of anticipation and a strange reluctance as I took it from him. It felt strangely light in my hands, almost delicate, a profound contrast to the growing, leaden feeling in my chest. Inside, nestled amongst dried lavender that still held a faint, sweet scent, lay a tarnished music box that chimed a mournful, off-key lullaby when Lily carefully wound its tiny key. Its melody a ghostly echo of happier times that now seemed tinged with sorrow. And beside it, a worn, leather-bound diary, its cover smooth and dark from years of dedicated handling, practically humming with untold stories, beckoning us closer. A palpable sense of destiny, or perhaps dread, settled upon us, heavy as the attic air, building the trepidation for what lay within those pages. Part 3, Whispers of a Deception. Lily gasped, her fingers trembling as she recognized the familiar, elegant script instantly. It's Grandma's hand. Oh, I remember this book. She used to write in it every night before bed. A little ritual, she murmured, her voice filled with a painful nostalgia that briefly overshadowed the mystery, pulling her back to simpler, happier times. We huddled together, the weak, dappled sunlight filtering through a grimy attic window, illuminating the first few lines as she turned the brittle, yellowed pages. Grandma's handwriting, usually so firm and confident, was shaky here, almost hesitant, betraying a fragility we rarely saw in her. She wrote of a kindness betrayed, a trust misused during a time of weakness, and the sting of a scorpion hiding within the nest. Each word was a tiny shard of glass, pricking at our comfortable image of Grandma's untroubled past, shattering the serene picture we held of her later years. A tight knot formed in my stomach, coiling tighter with each painful word. Betrayed, Grandma, our strong, unshakable Grandma. By whom? And how could she have hidden such profound pain from us, her own family? Why the silence? The questions screamed in my mind, a frantic, internal scramble to identify the invisible enemy, to reconcile this shattered image of her peace. Our unshakable matriarch, the one who always stood tall and strong against any storm, betrayed by someone she trusted implicitly. It felt like a profound, personal affront, a violation of her very spirit that echoed deep within my own soul. My mind immediately raced, frantically sifting through family faces, trying to put names to these vague, devastating accusations. Who dared to take advantage of her, to wound her so deeply, and leave her feeling so helpless she could only write it down in secret, her final cry for help? Lily's initial tears of sorrow began to shift. They were still falling, but now there was a dawning realization in her wide, red-rimmed eyes, a flicker of outrage that slowly began to replace her pure, innocent grief. Her innocence was cracking under the weight of this ugly truth. How could anyone, do this to her? She whispered, her voice cracking with disbelief, raw with pain, her small hands clutching the diary as if to protect it from further harm, to shield Grandma's vulnerable words. Her innocent view of the world, a world where Grandma was invincible and family was sacred, was crumbling right there, in that dusty attic, replaced by a cynical, painful reality. Max, usually so stoic, his face a mask of quiet contemplation, slowly clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowed, reading over our shoulders. A flicker of cold calculation entered his gaze, replacing mere curiosity, as if he were already dissecting a complex problem, planning a counterattack. This isn't just about some old family squabble, is it? He murmured, a dangerous, low edge creeping into his voice, the sound almost a growl. This feels calculated. Someone deliberately hurt her, profited from her pain, meticulously, systematically. He slammed a palm softly against the dusty floor, a gesture of contained fury that spoke volumes about his burgeoning rage and grim resolve. The air in the attic, already thick with dust and forgotten things, now felt charged with a growing, unsettling suspicion that began to poison the very idea of family, tainting every cherished memory. The diary didn't name names, but the subtle hints, a blood relative, when I took into my home, nursed back to health, the bitter taste of my own kindness turned against me. A viper in the garden sent a cold shiver down my spine, chilling us to the bone and tainting the warmth of every past family gathering. We felt, for the first time, a collective sense of profound unease, a silent, unspoken promise to Grandma that we could not let this go. The quiet echoes of her pain filled the room, demanding answers and pushing us toward the next, even darker truth. Part 4, The Trail to the Old Bank. The next riddle, inscribed on a tiny, hand-painted ceramic bird, was far more specific. A faded watercolor painting by Grandma herself, depicting a quaint, old bank building downtown, its ornate facade hinting at a bygone era, almost mocking us with its serene image. Scrawled on the back was a precise address in what we now recognized as Grandma's frail, but unmistakable hand. It seemed innocent enough, a simple direction, but after the agonizing hints from the diary, we knew better than to trust appearances. This was no ordinary treasure hunt. It was an investigation, a hunt for a perpetrator, and our stomachs churned with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. We understood, intuitively, that the stakes had just been raised exponentially, moving from whispered accusations to concrete locations, demanding action. The journey to the bank felt less like a casual drive and more like a grim pilgrimage into the past, each block bringing a new wave of apprehension, a sense of nearing a dark, painful truth, a truth etched in financial records. Getting information from the old institution was a nightmare. It was like pulling teeth from a concrete wall, every step met with bureaucratic resistance, evasive answers, and endless paperwork. Days bled into weeks of endless phone calls, navigating labyrinthine bureaucratic hurdles, and filling out mountains of tedious legal papers, each one a test of our dwindling patience and a slow, agonizing burn of frustration. Max, usually so patient, became relentlessly focused, his composure stretched thin, but his determination only growing with each closed door and evasive answer. His quiet fury, a palpable force, became the engine of our progress, pushing us forward relentlessly, his frustration a silent roar. "This is ridiculous." Lily burst out one afternoon after another dead-end phone call, slamming the receiver down with a frustrated cry that bordered on a desperate wail. Her usual bubbly energy was replaced by an almost frantic edge, her emotions raw and exposed. "They're making it impossible. Maybe Grandma just made a mistake. Maybe there's nothing here, and we're just chasing ghosts, embarrassing ourselves, wasting our time while we should be grieving." Her voice trembled, teetering on the edge of despair, the weight of the search pressing down on her innocent heart. Max turned to her, his eyes blazing with an intensity that startled her, an intensity born of his own internal battle against doubt and the mounting pressure, his own suppressed anger threatening to erupt. "No. Grandma didn't make a mistake when she wrote in her diary about being betrayed, Lily. She was deliberate. She was telling us something she couldn't say aloud, and she didn't just happen to send us here. Someone hurt her, Lily, and we're going to find out who. We have to. Don't you dare give up on her now." I stepped between them, feeling the palpable tension radiating off both of them, a reflection of our shared stress and the strain this mystery was putting on us. "He's right, Lily. We owe her that much. We can't give up now, not after what we read. She trusted us with this." Lily, surprisingly, displayed an uncharacteristic stubbornness, her small face set with grim resolve, her fierce loyalty to Grandma fueling her every effort, her initial despair slowly morphing into quiet determination. And me, I felt a growing sense of dread, a cold, icy premonition that whatever secrets this venerable building held, shielded by layers of bureaucracy, would be far, far worse than anything we could possibly imagine. The air thickened with unspoken questions, with the tangible weight of impending Part 5, The Shocking Financial Revelation. Finally, Mr. Peterson, looking tired but undeniably victorious, called us back to his office. The sterile, quiet hum of the air conditioning felt oppressive, a stark contrast to the turbulent emotional storm brewing within us. He laid out a stack of documents on his polished mahogany desk, their crisp edges a brutal counterpoint to the chaos in our minds. My breath hitched in my throat, a ragged gasp of disbelief as I saw them. A series of large, inexplicable withdrawals. Not just one or two, but a systematic, merciless draining of Grandma's accounts, month after month, year after year. The dates screamed at us, aligning perfectly, chillingly, with the exact timeframe Grandma had been battling her most debilitating illness, when she was frail, vulnerable, and trusting to a fault, clinging to the familiar faces around her. It was like watching a robbery unfold in slow motion, except the victim was Grandma, and we, her fierce protectors, had been utterly powerless to stop it in the past. A wave of white-hot, scalding fury washed over me, so intense it made my head spin, my vision blurring at the edges, the room tilting precariously. It felt as though I had been personally violated, I had been robbed, I had been mocked by this unseen hand, a cruel, grotesque joke played on her kindness, on our family's love. How could we have let this happen? How could we have been so oblivious, so blind to her suffering? We, who loved her so fiercely, missed all the signs, all the quiet cries for help buried in her silence. Shame and a rising tide of desperate anger churned within me, a bitter taste in my mouth, hot and metallic, tasting of betrayal. My God, I whispered, my voice barely audible, thick with guilt and disbelief, a raw, wounded sound. Lily stared at the papers, her face ashen, all tears gone, replaced by a terrible, unnatural stillness. Her entire body seemed rigid with shock. She didn't cry. Her eyes were wide, filled with a horrified disbelief that slowly, agonizingly, solidified into a burning resentment, a silent scream against the injustice that had befallen our beloved grandma, an innocent soul targeted by a monster. Someone actually did this to her, she breathed, her voice a raw, barely audible whisper, laced with absolute disgust. Someone from our family. This is sick. It's truly, utterly sick. How could a human being be so cruel? Max, who had been standing beside us, his frame tense, his eyes fixed on the documents, suddenly slammed his fist silently onto the polished table, the sharp, authoritative crack echoing in the quiet office like a gunshot. Damn it. Who dared do this to her? He growled, his voice guttural with suppressed, volcanic rage, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might literally crack from the pressure. He looked like he wanted to punch something, anything, to tear down the walls, to release the agonizing helplessness he felt at not being able to protect her when she needed him most. The cold, hard evidence burned like acid in our hearts, forging a grim, unyielding resolve that demanded answers and immediate retribution. Our collective shock was quickly morphing into a dangerous, unified fury. Part 6. The name Uncle John's Betrayal. And then, Mr. Peterson, his face grim, pointed a steady finger to the final, largest transaction, at the very bottom of the page. The name of the recipient, clearly printed in a bold, undeniable font, sent a shockwave through our very core, rattling the foundations of our family history. John Miller, our Uncle John, Grandma's own brother, the man who had always brought her flowers on her birthday, who had wept openly and dramatically at her funeral, seemingly heartbroken. The room spun. The air crackled with a silent, collective scream that clawed at our throats, desperate to escape. No, Lily shrieked, a high-pitched sound of pure anguish and visceral betrayal. Her face crumpled, not in sorrow this time, but in revulsion, her mind recoiling from the monstrous truth, refusing to accept it. Not Uncle John. It can't be him. He loved Grandma. He visited her every week. He wouldn't. He was family. Her denial was fierce. A desperate, futile attempt to hold onto the cherished illusion of a loving, unbroken family. A childhood memory shattered in an instant, leaving her utterly exposed. Betrayal, sharp and cold as a winter blade, pierced through us, twisting deep in our guts, a nauseating mix of disbelief, disgust, and a sickening sense of being personally violated. It wasn't just financial exploitation. It was a profound violation of trust, a desecration of family bonds, a corruption of everything we held sacred about kinship and loyalty. The comforting, jovial image of the uncle we thought we knew shattered into a million grotesque pieces, replaced by a chilling shadow of deceit, greed, and callous manipulation. My stomach churned with a nauseating, acidic mix of disbelief, disgust, and a burgeoning, righteous fury that threatened to consume me. Lily, look at the dates. Look at the amounts. Look at the signatures. I cried, pointing a trembling finger at the damning page, my voice tight with my own desperate disbelief, fighting back tears of utter shock and the bitter taste of truth. It's all there, Lily. It has to be him. There's no other explanation, no way to sugarcoat this. He took everything, he ruined her. Max just stood there, momentarily frozen, his eyes fixed on the name, his face a mask of furious disbelief, his controlled rage now radiating in silent, terrifying waves, promising retribution. The betrayal felt intensely personal to him. He saw it as an attack on Grandma's honor, on her very essence, and by extension, on his own family's integrity, a stain that demanded to be cleansed. That bastard, he finally hissed, his voice a low, venomous growl, each word dripping with contempt, a sound of pure hatred that sent shivers down my spine. He played us all for fools. He played her for a fool. He stole from his own sister, from his own blood, from the woman who loved him unconditionally. The full, crushing weight of Uncle John's treachery settled upon us, heavy and suffocating, pushing us to the brink of despair, but also to the edge of a new, dangerous purpose. The air was thick with the dust of shattered illusions, and a new, chilling resolve, cold and hard as steel, began to crystallize within us, replacing grief with a burning, unquenchable thirst for justice. Part 7. Grandma's Final Confession and Plea. The final piece of Grandma's intricate puzzle was found exactly where she knew we'd eventually look, tucked away in a hidden compartment in the back of her favorite antique armchair, the one she always sat in to read and knit by the fire, a place of comfort now imbued with profound sorrow and a sense of sacred trust. It was a sealed, weathered envelope, slightly thicker than the others. My hands trembled violently as I broke the wax seal, the brittle paper tearing with a soft hiss, revealing her final, heartbreaking testament, a lengthy, handwritten letter. It wasn't a riddle, but a searing confession, a desperate plea from beyond the grave, her true voice finally breaking through years of painful silence. In agonizing, raw detail, Grandma recounted how Uncle John, seeing her weakened by illness and the fog of medication, had subtly, insidiously begun to manipulate her. He'd spun elaborate, heart-wrenching tales of his own spiraling financial woes, debts that threatened to consume him, his supposed rock bottom, preying on her boundless empathy and deep sense of family loyalty. He preyed mercilessly on her inherent generosity, her unwavering kindness, and her trusting nature, convincing her to sign away her beloved properties, her life savings, all under the guise of helping him out during his supposed darkest hour. I was too weak to fight, my dear children, she wrote, her elegant script now frail and wavering, some words subtly blurred by what I could only imagine were her own tears that had long since dried on the page, leaving ghostly trails of past pain. The image of our strong, vibrant grandma, reduced to this helpless, tormented, and exploited state, sent a fresh wave of agony through me, a raw, burning empathy that felt like a physical ache in my chest, twisting my very soul. I was too tired to truly grasp the full extent of his deception, too clouded by illness to resist. I stayed silent, my darlings, for the sake of family, to prevent a greater fracture, a scandal that would have shamed us all. My heart broke piece by agonizing piece, but I believed I was protecting you from the truth, from the pain that would surely tear our family apart. My own heart ached with a deep, bruising pain that spread through my chest, an echo of her silent suffering, a mirror of her immense sacrifice. She had endured this agonizing betrayal alone, silently suffering, sacrificing her peace, her dignity, all for us. The profound, selfless love she held for her family, even for the one who so callously betrayed her, was heartbreaking, soul-crushing, and filled us with a sense of immense, belated gratitude and a renewed surge of sorrow. But then her words shifted, gaining an almost ethereal strength, as if her spirit itself was rising from the page, defiant even in death, channeling her unbreakable will. But now, you, my dearest grandchildren, must be my voice. You must be my justice. He took what was mine through deceit and treachery, reclaim it, and share it equitably as I always intended. That is your true inheritance, not just the material wealth, but the truth and the courage to set things right. A storm raged inside me, a maelstrom of emotions, profound sorrow for Grandma's unimaginable, silent suffering intertwined with a blazing, pure, righteous fury at Uncle John. It wasn't revenge in the petty sense, but a fierce, primal, undeniable need for justice, for truth, for her memory, for her peace, for the integrity of our family's name. Lily, her face streaked with tears, was no longer just crying. Her sobs were punctuated by sharp, indignant gasps, a raw, almost guttural sound of pure, unadulterated outrage. We have to do something. We can't let him get away with this. Not after this. Never, she cried, her small fists clenched, her body trembling with a newfound, steely resolve that radiated from her innocent heart, now hardened by bitter truth. Max's eyes burned with a cold, terrifying fire, a dangerous glint that promised a reckoning. He won't get away with this, he said, his voice low and dangerously calm, leaving no room for argument, his every word a chilling vow. Grandma asked for justice, and we're damn well going to give it to her. No matter what it takes. No matter the cost. He will pay. The task was no longer a burden. It was a sacred, undeniable calling, a mission infused with love and righteous anger. We were no longer just grandchildren reading a will. We were instruments of her final, powerful wish, ready to fight for her honor, her legacy, and the justice she so profoundly deserved. The air in the room crackled with a silent, unbreakable pact, our individual pains forging a single, unyielding will, surging towards an inevitable, dramatic confrontation. The resolution and reflection. The courtroom, once a crucible of tension and raw emotion, now felt strangely quiet, almost peaceful. The verdict, delivered with a calm finality, brought a collective sigh of release from us. Uncle John, stripped of his ill-gotten gains and facing the cold, hard glare of public judgment, was forced to return every penny he had stolen. The battle was long, grueling, and at times, incredibly painful, tearing open old wounds and exposing the ugliest side of greed within our own family. But standing there, side by side with Max and Lily, a profound sense of calm settled over me. It wasn't the wild, triumphant joy of revenge, but something far deeper, the quiet satisfaction of justice served. The weight of Grandma's silent suffering had finally been lifted, a burden we didn't even know we carried, now gone. We divided Grandma's inheritance, not just the money, but the truth that came with it. It felt different now, cleansed, earned, a legacy forged in struggle and shared purpose. What she left us wasn't just assets. It was a final, powerful lesson. We learned about the insidious nature of betrayal, the quiet strength of a woman who chose silence to protect her family, and the undeniable responsibility of the next generation to right the wrongs of the past. Lily, her spirit bruised but unbroken, began volunteering at a senior support center, fiercely advocating for the elderly, her empathy now sharpened by experience, determined to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Max, ever the protector, channeled his intensity into community legal aid, ensuring others wouldn't fall victim to similar deceptions. His sense of duty broadened to encompass a wider justice. And me. I found a new voice, a burning need to share stories like Grandma's, to peel back the layers of silence and remind people that even when injustice seems hidden, the truth will always find a way to surface. Our own inner landscapes had been irrevocably altered, leaving us wiser, stronger, and more connected than ever. Grandma's real legacy wasn't just the wealth she had painstakingly built. It was the courage she instilled in us to fight for what's right, to honor her memory by becoming her voice when she could no longer speak. She led us on a difficult journey, forcing us to confront a dark truth within our own blood. But in doing so, she gave us something invaluable: the power of clarity, the strength of unity, and the bittersweet peace of knowing we truly honored her final, deepest wish. Her story reminds us that sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what's left to you, but what you have to fight for, what you have to uncover to finally set things right, finding your true self in the process. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible emotional journey. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about the quiet battles fought by those you love, please hit that subscribe button, give us a follow, and drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. We're all in this together, sharing stories that matter.